Hi, yeah.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Now for something a little bit different. Guys, this is a big week for me. It's episode 50. Yes, that's right. I finally hit the big 50. Literally, this year I turned the big 50, and the episode turned the big 50, coincidentally. So it's a big year for 50. Not only is it a big episode for that, but guys, we are starting our next installment in the Spotlight series, where we shine the light on a new actor. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the wonderful Oliver Reed with Mr. Jose. Jose, welcome back. And of
Thanks
course,
for having me
Justin.
back.
Justin, welcome back. Now, this
Thank
was
you for having me
Jose's,
back again.
of course, this is Jose's choice, the wonderful Mr. Jeff Bridges here. And we're going to be talking about the 1979, I will call it cult classic, because I think that definitely is a title that fits it, a film called Winter Kills. Not only that guy, but because this is our 50th episode, I brought back the one and the only Mike, the wildebeest Wilden. Mike, welcome back, bud. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back, guys. Good to be here.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
it's awesome. So yeah, I'm really excited, guys. Jose picked this one. He said it's like this one's a little bit bonkers. I believe that was the term you used a couple
Yes.
months ago when you were deciding this as one of your choices. And I was like, well, it's Jeff Bridges. Let me check it out. And I remember seeing it a couple months ago when you first mentioned it. And I was like, damn, this film is bonkers. And I watched it again last night, and then I watched it again this morning. Just mainly watched the extra features this morning, and yeah, it's definitely crazy. But play my hand way too early. It's a good kind of crazy. It's the kind of crazy we like here on the channel.
Oh yeah.
So I can't wait to get into discussing the film. Before we do that, we'll do our normal talk about what we've been watching. Mike, it's your first time back in a long time. Do you want to step up and tell us what you've been watching, what we should be watching?
Sure, I will. I went recently to the movies. I like to go on Thursdays when I know something's going to end. I check my Regal app and I find out when something's going to end. And finally, I had some free time and I went and saw Anora, the yeah, Sean Baker, big hyped up Cannes Award winner, starring Mickey. What was her last name? Jose.
Madison.
Mickey Madison. Yes,
Mikey Madison. Sorry, Mikey.
Mikey, sorry, yes.
Mikey Madison. Thank you, bro.
Mikey
I
likes
don't
it.
want you. I don't want you getting those Mikey stands on you.
I know I will. Oh, I'm going to make them really mad because I'm not a big fan of hers, and I've been pretty loud about that. I'm not a big fan of hers. I don't. I thought she was the weakest daughter on Better Things. I didn't. I thought she almost ruined Scream 5. I've not really been a big fan of her, and she's like nails on a chalkboard. Like she's one of those that gets all the hype, and I just She's kind of like Glenn Powell for you, Jose, for me.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't get it. I don't get it with her. And so I went to Honora because of the hype, and I was like, okay, I'm going to see this. And I tried to be open-minded. I kind of was like, okay, this is going to be fun. I like Tangerine is fun. I have seen Tangerine and I enjoyed it. But I've heard so many mixed things about his other films, and I just lost interest. And I don't like Simon Rex, so I never saw Red Rocket.
Oh,
But I
now
know
you're
I
hitting
need
me, man.
to.
I'm a Simon Rex fanboy. How dare you hit my heart?
Oh, I remember the McNasty stuff he did on as a VJ, and I just thought he was corny.
Well, that
As
I
a
thankfully didn't see. I knew him from
Yeah.
well, other things, but also I think it was
Me too.
I'm sure
one of
that's
the
what you
few
guys
bright
knew him from.
one of the few bright spots of well, I mean, there's some good things about those Scary Movie 3, but I thought I kind of liked him, and I liked him a lot
Yeah,
in Red Rocket. I finally caught up with Red Rocket this year and quite
Yeah, Red
liked it.
Rocket's the only one that I've seen of the other ones, although I've heard many good things. And it's definitely out there, Red Rocket. And there's some moments you're
Mhm.
like, oh, that's fucked up. Even for me to say that, oh, that's fucked up, it's fucked up. But I had a lot of fun with that one too. But I need to catch up with the Tangerine and the Florida Project and some of the other ones.
yeah, I do too. I mean, I really do because Tangerine's really funny. It's like if Kevin Smith did Friday kind of with like
Mhm.
trans prostitutes. It's really fun.
It
I had a good time with it.
that took me a while to get used to. It took a second viewing for me to get Tangerine. The first time I was just kind of put off by it. It's also like Soderbergh's Unsane. It was shot all on iPhones.
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting. But you didn't like Honora.
I it's not that I didn't like it. I liked it okay. I would say out of a four, I'd give it 2.5, or I'd give it 6 out of 10. It's okay, but it's too long. It's too meandering. And again, like Tangerine, there's no real ending. It just kind of like boom. We stuck with this kind of like, here it is, here's the slice of life, which is cool. I get that. I like it, but I thought the middle section was way too meandering. Um, I did actually like her much more than I've ever liked her in anything else before. Honestly, I did think she was really good, but her accent, I don't know if it was part of what she was trying to do, but the accent would come out really strong and then it would change. And I don't know if that was a character choice, but it bothered me a lot. The accent slipping in and out, the thick New York thing that she was doing. And then, but yeah, I don't know. It kind of came and went for me. But otherwise, I didn't see the hype. I didn't love it, but everyone's going to see it because I'm sure it's going to get nominated. She literally bears it all. But for me, I just want everything and all the love to go to the substance and the two ladies there. So that to me, she's good and all, but not compared to Quali and Demi. So as far as Oscar watch, she's okay, and she probably will get a nomination and probably will win because she does literally bear it all, and it's the most like I've liked her in something. But I think Sean Baker needs to hire someone to edit his own movies. He can't do it himself. His movies. That's why I haven't seen Red Rocket. 2 hours and 7 minutes about an ex porn star, and then this one's like, 2 hours and 20 minutes. So it's like that middle section was like could be 30 minutes could be shrunken into about 5 minutes, you know what I mean? And then we just binged on a TV show with Ted Danson called The Man on the Inside, I think it's called. I really, really like this. It's an 8 episode. It's based off of I think it's a Spanish documentary, a quirky documentary that I think it was at Sundance. I never caught it, but it's basically about an older gentleman who gets asked by a private investigator to go and stay in an old folks home for 30 days to kind of see why things are getting stolen. And so
That sounds great.
that's the concept, except it's Ted Danson, who's a retired like professor, and he's just so good in this. And I mean, my wife was bawling the whole time because she had her parents passed away recently, and it has to do a lot with dementia, it has to do a lot with that stuff. But it is so sweet, and it was almost cathartic for her. So it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and I hope he gets a lot of love when it comes time for awards. So binge that up. I think it just hit either this week or last week recently on Netflix.
So
Nice.
is this Netflix's version of Only Murders in the Building, only it's called Only Thefts in the Building in the retirement home? Sorry.
I'm also pretty sure
No.
that was a Simpsons episode from like the late '90s too. I'm almost
Right.
positive.
It probably well, it's based off of a documentary. It's actually written and directed by one of the co-creators of like Parks and Rec, and he did The Office, like a bunch of stuff. So it's really well done. It's really well shot. There's some like, and it's all about Ted, man, and he just kills it. He's so good in every scene. It's not Ted anymore. He becomes this character,
Mhm.
and you just love him and the little journey he goes on in these like 8 episodes. So of course, I hope they keep it as it is based on the documentary. But I mean, if it gets a big fan base, I would definitely go for another season. But for the most part, those are the two big things I'd seen.
Mhm.
I watched some other little movies here and there. I guess I can talk about the one that I watched that's kind of been controversial that I really liked. It's called Hot Frosty. It's on Netflix, and it should not be as good as it is. But tell you what, Jose, you need to see this shit. Justin, you need to see this shit. John, you'll probably
Uh,
hate it, but it
I'm
is
pretty sure that
so
was a Simon Rex movie that Jose and I used to watch.
It sure was.
Yeah.
Dude, it's literally about an ice sculpture Frosty that comes to life because what's her name from Mean Girls, the cute one who does all the Hallmark movies, Chalbert. I'm gonna ruin her
Lacey
name.
yeah,
Lacey
Lacey
Chabert.
Chabert,
Oh, okay.
yes. And my
Yeah.
wife has worked with her before, and she said she's like an angel. She's super sweet, and she does a lot of Hallmark movies. But this is her first like Netflix Christmas movie, and it's adorable. It is really, really, really good. It's funny, it's sweet, and it's saccharine, but it really works. It's going to be a new Christmas like classic for me. I loved the heck out of it, and all my friends. I was talking to one of my buddies because he's like, "You didn't like Anora, but you love Hot Frosty. What the hell, dude? That's fucking stupid." I'm like, bro, I love Hot Frosty, man. This shit is awesome. It's so funny, it's so corny, but it knows what it is, but it's sweet and it's that kind of Christmas warmth that you can watch with the whole family. My whole family watched
Yeah.
it. And we all had a blast with it, except for my 15-year-old. Of course, he was like, "What is this corny shit?" Went down to go shoot people in video games. So, but I had a blast with it, and I recommend it for people who want something corny. And also, there's a new Lindsay Lohan one coming out soon, so I know that's going to be fun. So it's
Because I
fun. You
know
get to watch
Jose's
those.
aware of that one.
Yeah, watch those
I
back to
can't wait.
back.
Yes.
You know,
So
as
that's
much as
me.
I make fun of those type of movies, those movies have a place, and if they're done well done, you know, they find an audience, man. Year after year, they find this huge audience.
It's like comfort food. You
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
exactly what you're getting. There's no surprises and it's cute. I mean, I'm looking at these pictures of Dustin Milligan shirtless in this
Yep,
and I'm like, okay, I'm in on this. He was in
you're gonna love it.
like what 90210 and I think he did a shark movie too, I think, whatever. But yeah, it looks great.
It is.
I mean,
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. You guys will both like it.
yeah,
Very cool.
once you told me that plot, I heard the name, but I was like, I mean, there's so many Christmas movies, but I didn't know that was the plot. So I will actually check this one out then. But to your point, John, I mean, these aren't always my, well, this one's my bag just because of that crazy
Yeah.
ass plot, but usually they're not. But I mean, you can make that same argument. A lot of monster movies, a lot of slasher movies are
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah. No,
formulaic and the same,
absolutely.
but they're my comfort. So like, I
Oh
try
yeah,
not
yeah,
to
dude.
rag on people too much when it's like when they get into those Hallmark movies. I'm like, hey, look, the criticisms I have, you can make similar criticisms to, Elevation,
Trust
which
me.
I'm not really going to talk about, but I watch that. It's decent at best, but
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for monster movies, so
Trust me, every time I go home for the holidays, I bust my sister and my mom's chops because they've sit me through, they torture me through much worse versions of this movie that he's talking about. And I
Yeah.
bust their chops because, like, you're making me sit through the same movie. It's like the same movie over and over again. But I am just as guilty. And there's something to be said for comfort food. I mean, the
Mhm.
reality, I don't know about for you guys, but I have so many movies on my watch list or on the Blu-ray pile that I haven't gotten to that I want to get to. But what do I go to? I go to that comfort food. I go
all
back
the
to that
time.
rewatch of that movie that's going to give me exactly what I'm looking for. I do it time and
Do
time again.
you know how many times I choose Billy Madison over something new? Something I've seen a Nora, but something like a Nora that's
Yeah,
more revered, and I'm like, nah, I'm just doing Billy Madison for the 100th time.
exactly. Absolutely. 100%. So who's up next? Who wants to talk about what we've been watching next?
I want to hear Justin talk about Elevation because I saw it too.
Okay,
Oh,
well, I'll
nice.
do.
There you
I
go,
wasn't gonna
Justin. You've
talk
been
about it,
nominated.
but I'll do it real quick. Yeah, it's decent. It's very formulaic monster movie. The easy. I mean, you kind of feel like, oh, a quiet place. They're quiet here. They can't go up to a
Mhm.
certain elevation, hence the title, or else I guess they explode. It's kind of ill-defined. The reason it kind of works is I didn't mind the design of the monsters, even though there's some dodgy effects on the second half. And I did like the cast. I thought at least Anthony Mackie and Morena Baccarin, those
Mhm.
two, even though the script is very, very on the nose, and you've seen this all before, he needs to go get medicine to save his kid. She's, feeling guilt about prior deaths. You've seen all this before. I mean, like you said with the joking about all these Hallmark movies are same. This is the dime a dozen. There's nothing really unique about this. But I'm a sucker for monster movies. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I didn't even know it was coming to theaters until it popped up on my Regal, and William and I went and saw it. We both kind of
Mhm.
came away going, decent. I mean, I think I saw. I think William said you had made a joke, Jose, asking like it doesn't look like it's much better than a sci-fi movie. I mean, it has a bit more of a budget than that, but I would also
Mhm.
argue maybe some of those sci-fi movies, unintentional or not, could have more entertainment value. If it wasn't for the cast and some of that monster design, yeah, I'd say this is pretty forgettable, and it mostly is, but it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, I had unfortunately for me it was totally predictable and you're right, like they just ripped off A Quiet Place and my feeling on it was it felt very like Mickey Rooney, hey folks, let's make a movie because the cast and everybody involved are also co-producers and plunked money
Mhm.
into it and helped edit it or whatever. But what
Mhm.
I but what was interesting to me was the way that it ended, and it felt very much like Skyline, that series, if
Mhm.
you remember, that series. I kind of want to see the sequel now and see where it goes.
Sure.
So yeah.
So it's funny you bring up Skyline because I've only seen the first, and I did not like the first. That one I thought like the color scheme and everything. I just thought it was annoying. But I've heard people say the sequels are actually kind of fun, and I have I think one or Beyond Skyline. I found it on Blue from like Dollar Tree. So I'm kind of curious to check out the sequel because somebody else was like, dude, I hated the first one too, but the sequel's actually fun.
Oh, 2 and 3 are fun.
Also,
Frank
Yeah.
Grillo,
don't they
Frank
have?
Grillo.
I was gonna say, don't they also have Frank Grillo, which the first was sorely
Yeah.
lacking. But yeah, I remember seeing the first one in theaters, and I'm a monster movie junkie, and I hated that movie. I just thought it was I thought it was headache inducing. I just I don't know
Yeah.
whose bright idea it was to use those type of light, and I didn't like the cast that for the most part. So maybe Elevation will go the same way. Obviously, I liked Elevation a little bit more than Skyline, but yeah, I mean it's completely predictable. This is more of a journey, not the destination type movie, but even then the journey's just still too predictable and just it's okay.
Yeah.
It's a time waster. It's something that would be perfect at home on cable back when cable would pump these types of movies like have this is the HBO staple from the 80s or 90s but made today.
Yeah, the guys behind it wrote and produced and did like SEAL Team. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't mind an Elevation TV show. Why not?
Nice.
Okay, so another one that I wanted to shout out, it's something else I saw, might have been the same weekend, but a few weeks ago. But I wanted to give it a shout out, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. That is Memoir of a Snail. So it is from the same director as Mary and Max, Adam Elliott. It is the same stop motion style. I was very surprised that my Regal got this, even if it was just for a quick week limited run with just like 1 or 2 show times a day. If you're not familiar with his work, what he does is this one is R-rated because there's a bit adult material, but for the most part, it's still innocent enough, but it deals more with adult themes. Mary Max was just like this is a lot about loneliness and how two outcasts kind of came together almost as pen pals. And this one is uh, traveling, or basically almost like a recap of a lonely person's life. It's called Memoir of a Snail because she grew up obsessed with snails and loving them. So she's kind of recounting her life to her pet snail through having, growing up in a single parent household, losing touch with her brother or having her brother separated from her, growing up thinking she finally found love, but it takes some unexpected turns, befriending someone that's very unique. But what I love about his movies is how earnest and true they feel because they're not on paper they sound like they're going to be misery porn, but even when it's dealing with some very heavy depression issues, there's this glimmer of hope in there that it's okay to be different, it's okay to be unique and weird. And the stop motion animation that he uses and some of the bright colors mixed with a lot of the more gloomy or grayish colors kind of capture that feeling that I think a lot of us outcasts grew up with, and a lot of us, who deal with anxiety and depression. These are like perfect capturing of that, and they're just somehow the most delightful yet sad movies you'll see, and they always have this glimmer of hope. Thank you to my Regal for getting it. It was me and a few other people in the theaters, but it was one of those few times when I was going into a movie, the theater employee, the usher, was happy that I was going into it because, oh my God, such a good movie. You're gonna love it. And I'm like, I love when you can tell, like, this was for us and the actual people who worked at the theater who love movies. We know it's not going to show for much, for that long. I don't know where this is going to be streaming. I'm sure it'll be streaming soon, maybe Netflix. I don't know. Once it hits, definitely check it out and go back and check out Mary and Max too. They are just
Oh, dude, I'm
absolutely wonderful
jealous.
movies.
Mary and Max was a fantastic movie. I caught that one. I think I found it at the library. I rented it. And I said, "Oh, I like animated films. Let me see what this is all about." And I fell in love with that movie. So
Mm.
that I'm quite. That's awesome that you get an opportunity to see a movie like that. Because
Yeah, I was very surprised that it was weird because
yeah,
my Regal got that a week before it got Nora, and I did like Nora, but the funny thing was I tried asking them, hey, are you gonna get Nora? Because usually they do, but every now and then sometimes
yeah,
those types of movies they slip through their cracks. And I noticed my other local theater was showing it. I almost went and paid like the 18 bucks out of pocket, but I'm like, let me wait till Tuesday night. And I'm glad because I
Mhm.
enjoyed the movie and it was only $8. I'm always glad to help that theater. Literally the next day, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're getting a Nora. We just got it ad for this weekend." I'm like, "Why? Why? You didn't even know that Tuesday night? I could have saved $8." But but I was
Wow.
like, when I got that instead of a Nora early, I was like, every now and then they'll do that. And now that we're getting into the Christmas season, it'll be a little bit more hard pressed to do that. But yeah, I just every now and then I'm like, I don't know what strings they're pulling. Maybe that usher was like, dude, we need to get this movie. I want to see it. But
The
it
voice
was a
cast
delight.
looks amazing. We have
Mhm.
Sarah Snook, Cody Smith McPhee, Eric Bana, Jackie Weaver, Nick Cave, and
Mhm.
Dominique Pignon. This is great, and the director apparently grew up on a shrimp farm in Australia. Who knew?
He
But
also did, I forgot to give a shout out to My Life as a, well, it's a courgette, but I think it's a zucchini here. But My Life as a Zucchini is a very similar film. That one's wonderful. And yeah, he usually gets for the American releases really good voice cast. Like Mary Max had Tony Collette, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Eric Bana was, I believe, in that too. So it's one of those. Sometimes you'll see these, maybe foreign animated movies that get dumped to Netflix, and you can tell, like maybe Antonio Banderas or whatever, just getting a paycheck. But you get the
Hmm.
vibe from these types of films. It's like, no, they're drawn to these like you would be drawn to dubbing a Studio Ghibli film. You know,
Oh, absolutely.
they want to do this. It's for the art, and it's a beautiful film. I'm so happy I got to see this in the theater because Marion Max was, maybe that was Netflix. Maybe that's, I just remember catching that streaming years ago after kind of hearing some rumblings and just falling in love. I'm like, where was this dude all my life?
Yeah, I
ah,
Hmm.
was lucky to
nice.
catch Mary and Max at Sundance, and it was
Ah,
everyone cried. It was a full screening, and
Oh yeah, I
he was
cried.
there for a Q&A too, so it was cool.
I
Oh,
got
that's
teary
awesome.
eyed. Memoir of a snare,
Very cool.
snail as well. Memoir of a snare is the MTV
Snare.
version. And then lastly, this one I watched actually on Prime, but it's available on Tubi. I want to say our good friend Randy recommended it earlier this year, and it's been picking up a lot of buzz in our circle. William also recommended it. I finally got to it last night. That being Hundreds of Beavers, which, if you don't
Yeah.
know what this is, the best way to describe this movie is if Charlie Chaplin starred in a live action crude Looney Tunes cartoon. That's kind of the result of this because it has a silent film aesthetic, more of a look than it does quite the sound of it. And a lot of it is like gags you would get out of Looney Tunes cartoons. So the whole idea is you have this trapper, and I think it's like 19th century, I want to say Wisconsin it was supposed to be, but basically in the wilderness in the winter, and he's trying to survive, but he's also trying to wed the shop owner's daughter. So in order to do that, he has to keep killing all these beavers because that's basically currency at that point. But all of the beavers, as well as rabbits and all of that, are just people in costumes, like the ones you would find at like a Spirit Halloween store, just that you would wear to like a costume party. It is the goofiest, most strangely odd and compelling movie. The only criticism I would have is to a different degree, but it does meander a bit, kind of similar to Anora. But once it brings it back around, that finale is genuinely epic. It's a lot of fun. Just kind of go in as cold as you can and just let the bonkers pratfalls and just gags wash over you. But yeah, this deserves its acclaim that it's been getting this year. This is definitely going to be a cult movie. I want to see what this dude does more of. I had a lot of fun with this.
Awesome. I've heard good things about that. I think a couple weeks ago I caught the Raiders. I think Raiders the podcast. I think covered it. I think
I
maybe
think
a
so.
couple
Yeah,
weeks ago, a month ago. Yeah, and
yeah. I
and
think
most
somebody
of the
else had
guys
just
liked it.
somebody had
Yeah,
just covered it. And I know William watched it on Tubi, and it was just one of the ones that just every time I went,
yeah,
probably comfort movies kept winning out. And then last night I was
yeah.
just like, well, it's also on Prime, so I'm like, I'm gonna finally watch it. And yeah, it was a blast.
Very cool. Well, you definitely got me looking out for that movie, a couple different movies because I didn't know the director that did Max and Mary had a new movie. So hopefully that will come to streaming. And I've been looking to see Hundreds of Beavers for a while. So, and usually it's another type of beaver, but this time I'm actually going to
I
see
know.
it.
I was waiting for Jose to make that joke. I'm like, that one didn't star
well,
Simon Rex though, but
I know. I was gonna say we had our Simon Rex moment. I was waiting for one of the other guys to weigh in.
So I guess that'll bring me to you, Mr. Jose. What have you been watching this week? Catch us
Well,
up.
it seems every time I come on to your show, I spoil our upcoming episodes. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. We fell into the Glicked thing. Glicked, meaning Gladiator 2 and Wicked. Although
I prefer
I
Wickiator. I think it flows off the
see,
tongue.
thank
Well, not
you.
just not just that, but Glick doesn't work as well because it's wicked, not wicked. So it should be Glicked, but that's not how it's spelled. Wickiator, I think, just flows better. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, Glicked, speaking of beavers, sounds like a sex move.
It does. Ah, I got
I got
Glicked. I
I got
gotta go to the
Glicked.
doctor. I got Glicked.
Yeah,
Maybe I should have
exactly,
worn
right?
protection.
So so this is sort of funny. Maybe I need my gay card revoked, but I have not ever seen Wicked, nor have I, nor until up to 4 days ago did I listen to the cast recording, and even then I only listened to like the first 5 songs. Um, but man, did I fall in love with Wicked. I will say this, it's a great movie musical. John Chu directed it. He did like the Step Up 2 and Step Up 3D, executive produced the sequels. He did Gem and the Holograms and G.I. Joe Retaliation. 2 Hasbro properties. I don't know what's going on with John Chu and Hasbro. And then, of course, Chu did Crazy Rich Asians, which was pretty fantastic and had, a historic, like mostly Asian cast, all Asian cast, actually. Um, this movie is incredible. It's tailor made for the ADHD crowd because every scene is colorful. There's a million dancers in every scene. It's overwhelming, but it's also really wonderful. There's a great message in it. Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo. I mean, I had no idea Grande had that range. Like I think it's like I want to say alto, soprano, opera, plus she can do the whispers, and then everything in this film is just it's wonderful, and I just fell in love with it. I saw it in 3D, and I would highly recommend everybody do the 3D. I mean, I thought a dancer was going to kick me in the face. It's that immersive and wonderful. Um, I think the social commentary maybe is a little too heavy. Um, but that's just me nitpicking. And the only reason why I say heavy is because there's a character who's wheelchair bound, and after all the other things that happen and that happen in the story and about discrimination and Elphaba's green, now there's a sister in a wheelchair. I'm like, it's a little too much, a little heavy. But I can't wait until part 2. It's a long movie, but yeah, it's wonderful. I wish it all the success. It was a packed movie theater when I saw it.
Oh, it's making a lot of money. Now I'm familiar, I guess, enough with Wicked just because, I have friends with a lot of theater nerds. But so you said there's a character in a wheelchair. Please tell me it's a monkey, and then in the second one, he's gonna learn to fly. Because
No,
that would
it
be
is not.
amazing.
It is not, but there are CGI talking animals and stuff. It's fabulous. It makes me want to read like the Wicked novels and then read like the original Oz stories. But that was great. Gladiator 2. So I'll just put it to you this way without spoiling all of our review. But I texted a bunch of people when I left the movie theater after seeing Gladiator 2, and the text literally was, "What the fuck was Gladiator 2?" It's poor Ridley Scott. He's a great filmmaker, but I think he needs to move on from these costume, big battle scene, epic things. This movie is like Top Gun Maverick. It's the same film. Even though there are little tweaks to the formula, it's just long, it's overdone. I think Paul Mescal was miscast in this. It's terrible. I made a joke that you should do a drinking game when you watch this. Take a shot every time somebody pulls out a sword. Take a shot every time Paul Mescal like reaches into the dirt and rubs it or whatever. Take a shot every time there's a Braveheart like speech. It's a lot, and it's not good. And I don't know. I want exhibition to thrive. Again, these showings were very crowded and it was wonderful, but I want people to go back to the theater for things like Honora. I know, Mike, you didn't like it. To go back to the theater for things like Honora and Wicked, and not Top Gun Maverick and Gladiator 2. It is telling that when the title for Gladiator 2 comes on, the eye splits into the two, and that's how they sort of show the sequel thing. But I'm like, yeah, cloned from the first one. It works perfectly.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
well, I'm
Justin.
sorry. I haven't seen it, so I don't even know, and I don't care that much. But I just wanted to be like, says the person who likes films like Madam Web. I don't want to hear you talking about people should go for these movies and not. No, I'm messing with you. That's honestly, just probably the first like negative I've heard, but even the positive reviews are pretty much, yeah, it's the same one. It's not as good as the first, but it's of decent enough, like Sword and Sandals. I like the first one a lot. I'm not big into those Sword and Sandals types movies, so I know I'll see this in theaters, but I'm not rushing out to it. And I'm curious about Wicked as well. I figured they're going to be playing throughout the whole season, so I don't need to rush to get to them.
Uh, I will say Denzel Washington is having the time of his life, and he's probably the best bright spot in the film. His scenes are just incredible. He's not even chewing scenery; he's destroying the scenery. It's amazing, absolutely
I will
amazing.
say missed
Nice.
opportunity though, and maybe this happens in the movie and they just didn't call it this, but instead of calling Gladiator and the number two, there should have been a line in the movie where it's like he sees, they talk about the Russell Crowe and he goes, "Well, I'm a gladiator too." And that's the title, Gladiator TOO. Boom, let's do it.
I yuck. So I'm gonna do two. I'm gonna do two more works, but before I move on, I just wanted to say that I love Ridley Scott. I really do. But this film feels like watching The Irishman and being like, okay, Martin Scorsese, maybe you need to move on from this type of material, right? But the other thing was this felt very much like those 80s sequels that basically just repeated the formula and they went bigger and better and crazier. In fact, it kind of feels almost like a mediocre, bigger, better direct to video sequel, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and
What was that one Transformers sequel we watched that you raved about? Because this sounds like something like that, but since you didn't like it, you're gonna rag on people going to see it.
yes, yes. All right. So then the two other things I'm going to say, and I won't say too much about them because I don't want to spoil them, is Dune Prophecy started on HBO, and that is based on Sisterhood of Dune, and of course the original Dune. And so it's kind of like a prequel. It takes place 10,000 years before Paul Atreides is born, and it's essentially how the Bene Gesserit became the Bene Gesserit. Um, it's really great. There's only one episode up, so you can join into it now. But Max basically has its new Game of Thrones, and it just happens to be like the Dune property. Um, but yeah, so that's really good. Emily Watson is in it. It has a really good cast. Mark Strong. Travis Fimmel is in it, and I really don't like him. I feel like he's one note, and all he can really do is kind of stare into the camera, smirk, and then go crazy. Surprise! That's all he does in this episode. But anyway, Dune Prophecy, it's fantastic. If you love the Dune movies, you're definitely going to like this. It has the same look and feel. The production design is amazing. Really, really great and attractive actors in this. And then the other movie is also a Max original. It's called Caddo Lake. Caddo Lake. And I'm not going to say too much about it because if I even mention a phrase, it will ruin the surprise. This is produced by M. Night Shyamalan, which does not mean you should not watch it because I know people hated Trap.
I liked it. I actually liked Trapped. That was
I
closer
liked
to
it
you.
I
too.
liked it too.
I
I
thought it
liked
was
it too.
fun. What can you
But
say?
this one stars Dylan O'Brien, who I love, Love and Monsters, not the Hunger Games, the Maze Runner trilogy or whatever. But it's curious. I was watching this movie. I'm about 35 minutes into it, and I'm kind of like, feel like I've seen this all before. Family drama, blah blah blah. And then it kicks in, and I was like, oh fuck, I should have been paying attention. And then at the end of the movie, I hurt my brain trying to figure it out. So I would like you guys to watch it and then explain it to me. But it's a head scratcher. It's a puzzler. It's kind of fantastic, actually. So please check it out. Yeah, that's all I've seen.
Very cool. Well, I'm very interested in both of those. All pretty much everything you mentioned, especially the Dune stuff. I'm always into that Dune stuff. I love the original movie, even though people hate the David Lynch version. I still love the original, and even the stuff the Sci-Fi Channel made back in the day. Even though it was a little bit wonky with the CGI, those were a lot of fun, and it really helped build up the lore for that world. So
That
definitely
was,
gonna be
yeah,
checking
that
that out.
sci-fi miniseries is fantastic, and it was also shot by Vittorio Storaro, probably one of the best and most influential cinematographers like in history.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm trying to think of one of those. I think Imprint, maybe. I think they put out a big bundle. Of course, it's ridiculously expensive, but it
They
has
did.
I think like every miniseries collected in one big bundle. And then I looked at the price tag and my jaw dropped, and I was like, "Yeah, I can't do this."
So sci-fi did Children of Dune, and Atreides was played by James McAvoy, I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so both of those series are really, really good.
Very, very cool. All right. I unfortunately, my job has just been sucking the life out of me slowly. We're down two
Oh,
people.
I
And
hear
I've
you.
Oh,
just, I've been,
Oh,
I've been, I've been doing the work of four people. We're getting paid for maybe one person, possibly. So I haven't had a lot of free time. I've been obsessed with a video game called Dragon Quest III for my gamer people out there. It's a remake of a game that came out in the 90s. And if you like role playing games, it's absolutely wonderful. So that's been taking up a lot of my time. And then one of my obsessions since I was probably in my early 20s, a good friend got me into The Count of Monte Cristo, the novel. It's become my absolutely all time favorite novel. And
Nice.
I have like three different versions of the book. I've seen a bunch of different film adaptations and TV adaptations. Lo and behold, I did not realize that it was turned into a musical. It was actually given a musical theater production by a gentleman you might know, Jose, because I know you're into the world of theater, a guy named Frank Wildhorn.
Yes.
He had
Jekyll and
known
Hyde.
for Jekyll and Hyde and a bunch of other stuff. So somebody one of the productions was in Germany, and a fan, I guess, got a hold of it, and he did a fan translation. And it's the full thing's on YouTube, and it's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, it basically Frank Wildhorn. To give you a little more info on him, he's an American composer known for Jekyll and Hyde, which ran for 4 years on Broadway. He also wrote the hit song for Whitney Houston, "Where Do Broken Hearts Go." Um, and then a gentleman named Jack Murphy wrote the lyrics and the dialogue for this show. He's known for collaborating with Frank Wildhorn on several different projects. The production stemmed from a New York City workshop in 2008. And after a concept recording of the production was released in '08, it went platinum. Um, and then the show had its actual first official premiere in Switzerland in 2009, of all places.
Hmm.
But it's played all out throughout Europe. Um, and it actually made its American premiere in Brigham University in Utah, of all places. Yeah, he was Frank
Mike's
Wildhorn was
hometown,
there.
kind of.
Yeah, and he was very impressed with the students, and they decided to have the American premiere. But it's played throughout the entire world. I'm hoping that New York will get it one day for a New York City production. Despite the subtitles, the music is beautiful. The actors are great, and it's really just a good time. If you like stuff, epic stuff like Les Miserables or stuff along those lines, it's a really, really good theater production. Definitely worth seeking out. They also have the newest version of it. It was, I guess, done in South Korea. Believe it or not, they did it in Seoul. And if you go onto Broadway on demand, you can rent it for like $4. So that's also an option. But for those that are a fan of that particular story or have seen any of the movies, it really takes it in a different direction. And it really is just epic, really just amazing. Highly recommend if you dig musicals. So definitely check that out. And then I went talking about comfort food earlier. I went to one of my favorite comfort foods, which is a show that went on from 2007 to 2013, which is Burn Notice. This is one of these shows that showed up on USA.
Mm-hmm.
Good old
I know
Jeffrey
this
Donovan.
show.
Love
Yeah,
It's a fun
Burn
show.
Notice.
yeah, fun show. Actually covered my last episode. I did a movie he was in 2019 called Villains. That was my last official episode for the show. And Burn Notice, basically a spy is burnt, and he has to go basically kind of clear his name and figure out why he was burnt. This is a very stupid but fun show. It's very addictive if you like spy shows. It's got, Bruce Campbell. It's got the lovely Gabriel Anwar and 111 episodes. So it's one of those shows that's just a good comfort food and just a fun time. So I definitely recommend checking that out if people haven't seen that. Like I said, it's been out for a million years. So a lot of
I
people
ad-
have. But
I adore Jeffrey Donovan just because of Burn Notice, and anytime he cropped up in like Sicario, I think, and something else, but like I just
yeah.
adore him. The other thing that I think is funny is when you go back and revisit that first season, Fiona has like an accent, and then she drops it after like 2 or 3 episodes, which is kind of interesting. But I love their interplay, and the episode is great. I mean, you learn weird, fun facts about like how much square pressure is exerted by a golf club, which is why you should use it as a weapon. I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows ever.
No, it's good, and it's funny because when I was looking at Donovan's career, he does pop up in a lot of, like, if you look at early in his career, like Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows, and stuff like that. But then if you go later down the rabbit hole, he shows up in a lot of stuff. Like I didn't write his complete resume, but he was in like a Scorsese thing. He had a
Hmm.
part. He shows up in a lot of high profile projects, and of course, anytime Bruce Campbell's on the screen, I'm there. You know what I mean? And Gabriel Anwar, she's one of those ones I love. I think she should have had a bigger career, but again, the interplay between the three, it's just wonderful. So yeah, those are the only two things that I've seen recently. Like yourself, I did see Wicked. I didn't write anything up on this, but I absolutely adored it. I thought it was wonderful. Eventually, I'm going to work my way to seeing Gladiator 2, but I haven't had, it's 2.5 hour movies. I couldn't do two in a weekend, so yeah, that pretty much sums up what I've been watching
Well,
recently.
before we move
Um,
on, I do have, in my opinion, a heartbreaking fact that ties into Burn Notice, and this
oh
ties it
no.
into the cinemaxis world of wrestling. You're not getting away from it, Jose.
Ah.
So
Uh-oh.
Bruce Campbell was doing an AMA recently, and one of the
Uh-huh.
questions he was asked was like, would he ever do something in wrestling? Because obviously, in the first Spider-Man, he's the announcer, and he is somebody
Yeah.
whose personality would work great as like a manager for someone. And he had
Mhm.
stated that he had actually filmed a skit for WWE because they were on USA at the same time. So when he was doing Burn
Mhm.
Notice, they went to do a crossover. And all he said was, but something horrible happened and it had to be canceled. So I and pretty much every other wrestling historian are like, oh, this was probably Chris Benoit. Because if Burn Notice was around 2007, right before the Benoit incident, we'll say, the murder, double murder suicide, they were doing a storyline where Vince McMahon was blown up in a limousine and they were going to do like a couple of weeks of like, oh, investigating. So the theory is he
Mhm.
probably did a skit, a joke off of like Burnout or something. So it's probably him and maybe Jeffrey Donovan trying to investigate it. But they killed that
Mhm.
storyline because then Benoit died, and then Vince is like, "Yeah, we're not going to continue the storyline where I die now because that's in bad." Which is crazy for Vince to come out and say, "Yeah, something's in bad taste," considering that dude is just one fucking
Yeah,
dude.
right. Of all people, right?
But but even he was, so there would have been a timeline. It probably would have just been a skit for one episode, but that Bruce would have been involved in pro wrestling and WWE. So unfortunately, it
I
didn't
know.
happen. Thanks,
I
Chris
know he has a
Benoit.
show on. No, that's incredible. He has a show on Peacock. I haven't seen it yet. Bruce Campbell. He has a new show. I can't remember the name of it. I didn't look it up or
Does
anything, but
he?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we might
So
get
I'm
that
gonna
wrestling
eventually check.
crossover then, because WWE's on Peacock. There's still
There you
time. Maybe
go.
that AMA was just like his assistant trying to test the waters again.
Very cool. So I guess now we'll get into the actual film. Jose, you do it so well. Would you like to talk about our behind the scenes people?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, this it's a pretty stacked episode, so I'll try to be brief. But Winter Kills is directed by William Richert, is how you pronounce it. Interesting, interesting man. Um, he is kind of like a cult type director in the respect that a lot of his films have not been widely seen. So we've got this movie. He would then do another movie with Jeff Bridges called The American Success Company, which is, I want to say it's kind of like Cinderella, but the plot is Jeff Bridges like is working at a wealthy like sort of corporate America kind of job, and he gets scorned by like his wife and things happening on the job, so he hires a hooker to help get revenge. So not really Cinderella. And then he also did A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. But what I think is curious about this man is that he, at age 19, he interviewed Richard Nixon's daughters as part. Yeah, exactly. In the chat, Justin was like more like Cinderella, Sin Derella, or like Pretty Woman, I guess, hookers, right? Um, but he interviewed Richard Nixon's daughters for a documentary called President's Daughters, and then he actually parlayed his work in documentaries to then doing these films. He actually co-founded a studio called Invisible Studio, and he bought the rights back to Winter Kills and the American Success Company. In fact, that's how I got the Blu-ray and the DVD was from his website directly. But I think you don't see a lot of his stuff because of those distribution issues. And that he's actually been an actor. He acted in My Own Private Idaho. He played Pigeon Bob or Bob Pigeon, sorry, in My Own Private Idaho, also starring River Phoenix. And then he played Aramis in his direction production. I'm sorry, the production that he directed of The Man in the Iron Mask. But because that was released the same year as the Leonardo Man in the Iron Mask, they had to call it like The Face of Alexander Dumas, The Man in the Iron
Noticed
Mask.
that, yeah.
So it's kind of weird. He's also kind of contentious in the respect that he's sued the Writers Guild of America over a credit for the American president, and then also claimed that Aaron Sorkin, who wrote that, also stole the idea from him for The West Wing. So there's also that, and then I think he sued the Directors Guild of America, something about like overseas levies or fines that American directors take when they film overseas, something like that. Interesting character is what I'm trying to say. Um, this this film is actually based on a novel by Richard Condon. Condon is best known for writing The Manchurian Candidate. And if you think about that novel, but then you think about this film and all of Condon's other thrillers that he sort of writes, they are really about sort of looking at politics and the corruption of the political system and just really taking it to task. And so, this is a quote from him himself. He says, "Every book I've ever written has been about the abuse of power. I feel very strongly about that, and I'd like people to know how deeply their politicians wrong them." And so, yeah, if you think about The Manchurian Candidate, even the novel Mile High, which is sort of like a secret history about prohibition, and then this film, yeah, Condon, yeah, he's a very social commentary. The screenplay is by Richard himself, actually. So he did the screenplay, and then music is by Maurice Jarre or Jar. I think it's Jarre, actually, but he's a French composer. You may know him from the fact that he has written the score for practically every David Lean film. And so he's won an Academy Award for Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, and Passage to India. But he's also crossed over into genre by doing scores for things like, hold on, Gorillas in the Mist. That's not that that's genre. I'm so sorry. Dreamscape, Enemy Mine, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, as well as dramas like Fatal Attraction, Dead Poets Society. So yeah, Maurice Jarre, fantastic composer. And then our cinematographer, speaking of most influential cinematographers in history, is Hungarian Vilmos Zsigmond, is I think how you pronounce it. But he is widely regarded as influencing the 70s American New Wave. He is known for the fact that he won an Academy Award for shooting Close Encounters of the Third Kind for Steven Spielberg. He also shot Sugarland Express, which was another Spielberg film. He is also known for shooting The Deer Hunter, and he has worked with luminary directors like Robert Altman, Brian De Palma, Michael Cimino. He shot Heaven's Gate, Woody Allen. McCabe and Mrs. Miller was one of the first, like, that's an anti-Western, if you think of it that way, but that really brought him to fame. Guy's got a really curious history. He and another influential cinematographer, Laszlo Kovacs, they actually took 35 millimeter cameras, get this, and they put them in bags that had holes, kind of like Courtney Cox in Scream 3. Sorry, I don't mean to like cheapen his history by mentioning Courtney Cox in Scream 3, but he and Laszlo actually filmed a lot of events of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution this way. And what happened was they both and their families ended up seeking political asylum and ended up in the US, and they sold the footage to Walter Cronkite to CBS, and they used it and that footage as a network documentary on the Hungarian Revolution. So that's actually how the two of them started. Kovacs actually recommended Zsigmond to shoot Easy Rider and The Hired Hand. And then later was recommended for Robert Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller. So um, Jigman has also shot Deliverance, The Long Goodbye for Altman, Obsession for Brian De Palma, and curiously enough, shot Blowout, The Bonfire of the Vanities, The Witches of Eastwick, which is one of my favorite movies, and was the cinematographer for the Mindy Project. So up until his
Oh, wow.
passing away, he was working like constantly. So he's brilliant. He's one of the best out there. Yeah. And that's my below the line. I think
Very good. As usual, you
Nice.
deliver
thank
awesomely.
you. I
All
think
right,
Red is
here I
doing
go.
the
I'm going to talk
cast,
about.
or you
I'm going to
are.
start
Yeah.
talking. Yeah, I'll talk about the cast. Going to start butchering some names here, but I can't fuck up Jeff Bridges. That's an easy one. I'm going to start
Yes,
off
it
with
is
Jeff.
easy.
He's playing the role of Nick Keegan, whose brother we find out was assassinated 16 years ago. Jeff was born in December 4th, 1949 in Los Angeles. His father and mother were in the industry already. His father is the well-known actor Lloyd Bridges, and his mom was Dorothy Dean Bridges. He grew up alongside his older brother Bo, and they both did appearances on Mom and Dad's projects, usually uncredited. Stuff like Sea Hunt in 1958 and other television shows and films. Um, in 1969, Jeff kind of transitioned and he had a big moment in his career when he starred in a TV movie called Silent Night, Lonely Night. And in this film, he was playing a younger version of his father. So that kind of got him some notice. And then by the year 1971 came around, this is when he got the real big break. The Last Picture Show by Peter Bogdanovich. And that was a movie that was one of those movies that just had its moment. It got pretty much, I think, nominated in several categories. Several actors got nominated, including Jeff Bridges for the first time. Sybil Shepherd got nominated, Timothy Bottoms. And that was the one that really kind of said, okay, this guy has power to like really do something. And there, from believe it or not, from then on, this guy would go on to be nominated for a total of 7 nominations, and stuff like The Last Picture Show, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, Starman, The Contender, Crazy Heart, True Grit, and Hell on High Water. And he would actually win for Crazy Heart. So he finally got his due, which is awesome. So that's a little bit just to tell you a little bit about this guy. We all know Jeff Bridges, but about his pedigree. After he did The Last Picture Show, he'd go on to do Fat City with Stacy Keach, which I love. He
Love
did
that
Bad
movie.
Company in '72. He did Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, excuse me, in '74. King Kong in '76. Tron in '82, of course. Last Unicorn in '84, no '82. Against All Odds in '84. Starman, Fisher King, Fearless, which we'll be talking about at some point, The Big
Yep.
Lebowski, The Contender, and a ton of other stuff. I didn't want to go through his entire resume, even though we all love Jeff Bridges, because if I did, I'd probably spend another 20 minutes just talking about the resume of Jeff Bridges. But I figured the big names, you know.
Oh yeah.
And then from there, we go on to John Huston, who is playing Pa Keegan. And John Huston has a huge career outside of acting as well as just doing stuff like directing and writing, you know. But focusing on the writing, I think, or not focusing on the writing, excuse me, focusing on his acting resume, I think a lot of people know him from stuff like from the original Casino Royale that came out in '67, or The Wind and the Lion, which came out in '75. One of my favorite roles was in The Hobbit. He played the voice of Gandalf.
Oh yeah.
Then in '85, he did another voiceover character. He did The Black Cauldron, which is one of those Disney movies that just kind of got swept under the rug, but I love it. And then probably the most recent thing was in 2018. They finally got the Orson Welles movie out, The Other Side of the Wind. I think that was one of those projects that I think he had been trying to get out. There were some issues, and I think posthumously they managed to figure out a release for that film. Obviously, you know, you can look at stuff like John Huston, stuff like Chinatown in '74, Breakout in '75. There's been just a ton and ton of stuff. Again, he's another one like Jeff Bridges. If I went on and on, it's been another half an hour just talking about his resume. I think he has like 172 credits or something. But like you said earlier, Jose, this cast is fully stacked. I mean, you got some real powerhouses in this film, which brings me to one of our next powerhouses. We got Eli Wallach. He's playing the role of Joe Diamond, and people might know Eli from doing stuff like that Magnificent Seven in 1960, The Misfits in 61, Lord Jim in 65, uh, Genghis Khan, The Sentinel, The Two Jakes, The Godfather Part 3. And believe it or not, he was actually in the Batman TV series from 1967. He played the character of Mr. Freeze, of all things.
Oh,
So,
Yep.
I didn't even realize that one. So he's kind of been all over the place. Um,
I love Eli Wallach. I just have to say this though. Every time I see him, I immediately in my head think he's Darren McGavin or whoever the Night Stalker is, Kolchak.
yep.
Like I think he's that actor because they kind of look the same,
have a
maybe,
similar
but
look. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
No, I can see that now that you mentioned it. Absolutely. Next, playing the role of mom, or yeah, basically that's all she's given the role. The title is, or Emma Keegan is Dorothy Malone. Now, Dorothy Malone is one of these actresses again. Been working. She was been working huge resume. People might know her from stuff like The Big Sleep or Night and Day, both of which were released in '46. The Daytime Ended in '79. Basic Instinct in '92. There's one for you. And she actually won an Oscar in 1957 for a film called For Written on the Wind. And of course, she has a ton more to her resume. Um, we have doing her premiere first time role is Belinda Bauer. Now, Belinda Bauer, this is her first role, and she's playing Yvette Malone, and she's quite a character in this movie. I will just say that. She plays Jeff Bridges' love interest, or I like to call it the crazy girlfriend. She's been in stuff like Flashdance. That's my own personal tagline there. Uh, Flashdance in '83. Also in the American Success with Jeff Bridges and our director, Mr. William Reichart. UHF, good old Weird Al. Got some Weird Al representation going on in '89. We got RoboCop 2, which I love. I don't care what people say. And
I know.
Poison Ivy 2. I don't know. I don't think I've seen the Poison Ivy. I've seen the first one. I didn't see the second one though.
Oh, I
Um,
have the
isn't
full
that-
set. I have the full
oh,
set
I'm
of
not
movies.
surprised. I'm not
They're so
surprised.
dirty and gross, but I love them.
It sits right next to Madam Web on the shelf.
That's right. That's right. And on just on the other side is the full Kickboxer series.
Hell
I
yeah.
like that. I like that. It's good. That's good placement. Good product.
Poison
Good
Ivy
product
2
placement.
is like one of those from my like what 1819. Oh my gosh, I loved Poison Ivy 2, man.
Nice. I will have to seek it out. I'm sure it's probably somewhere on Tubi, either Tubi or YouTube.
Yeah.
Jamie Presley, she bears it all, baby. She's so beautiful.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
See?
Oh, okay. No, I definitely know. I know what I got planned at some point. Next, we got Sterling Hayden, and he plays the role of Z.K. Dawson. Now, people might know him in stuff like 9 to 5 in 1980. He was in The Long Goodbye in '73, 1900, the film, in '76, The Original Godfather in 1970, Doctor Strangelove in '64, Prince Valiant in '54, Crime Wave in '53. Hellgate in '52, and he's again he has a huge career. Then we go on to Anthony Perkins. You gotta love Anthony Perkins, and he again Anthony Perkins always manages to play the oddball character, and
Always.
this film is no different. He's probably only on the screen for maybe 10 minutes, if that, probably under that, and he still manages to light up the screen for those 10 minutes. He plays a character named John Cerruti. Now, of course, everybody knows Psycho. He did that in 1960. Of course, the Psycho sequel that later came out. Catch 22 in 1970. Murder on the Orient Express in '74. I didn't know he did this. He played a version of Les Miserables, a TV version that came out in '74. He played, I think, Havar, or I'm probably getting that name. The
J-
the guy that's
Jafar.
after our main character.
Not Jafar. I'm sorry, that's the wrong musical.
I know that's Lion King. You know what I'm talking about, the main bad guy,
Jafar.
whose name I can't think of. But yeah, he played that role. He's been in stuff like The Black Hole in '79, Crimes of Passion in '84. And here's one for you. Toshiro Mifune, of all people. I think this is his first time doing an American role. He has a
Yep.
small part, the role of Keith, but I couldn't not mention this. So he's been in stuff mostly known working for Akira Kurosawa, stuff like Drunken Angel, Rashomon, Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, Sanjuro, High and Low, Redbeard, and he was in the another English role he did, or American role, excuse me. In '79, he did 1941, Steven Spielberg, another role. So another good guy. We have Ralph Meeker playing Game Boy Baker. He's been in stuff like Paths of Glory, The Dirty Dozen, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Without Warning, and a bunch of other stuff. And I almost forgot this one. I know you would have caught me, Jose, because you're good at catching me when I forget when I forget a character. And I almost missed one. This one, but Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor has a very small role. She's not even credited in the film. Character named Lola Camenti, and she's been, of course, Elizabeth Taylor, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, Ivanhoe, Giant, Cleopatra, a million other things. You know, she's just one of those icons.
Did you hear the little tidbit that I don't know if Richard shared it on the commentary or the extra on the Blu-ray, but did you hear about what he said about Elizabeth Taylor on there?
Yes, I watched that. I watched that documentary. How he had to get a special lens to shrink her because she was too. I don't want to say what he said, but
well, he was like, I was shocked she gained so much weight. So then they had to like find this like crafted lens to make her look smaller. I was like, wow. Anyway, some directors shouldn't talk so much. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. Listen, I like the behind the scenes stuff. I like commentaries, but come on, that's like, it's kind of mean. Yeah, that's a little mean spirited. I was kind of surprised they didn't need to share every detail. Yeah, no, absolutely. So now I present to you Mr. Justin, because Justin likes to give us a storyline and a tagline. I dare you to sum this story up in a sentence or two, Justin.
All right, I got this ready. A town stricken by fear chants evil dies tonight and kills an innocent man. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Halloween Kill synopsis. My apologies. My apologies. Winter Kills. Let me pull that one up. All right. It took a little bit, but I got it. Are you ready? A decades-old presidential assassination case is reopened after a recent confession sent the victim's half-brother on a wild goose chase.
That's a good job.
Simplifies it, and I like the fact that it simplifies it because this is my second time watching it. But the first time I watched it, the plot synopsis made it sound like a more straightforward thriller, and this is anything but straightforward.
Oh no, anything but.
Going in cold, pardon the winter pun, is the best way. We're gonna spoil some of it, but is a good way to go into this movie.
I will just say.
I was just gonna say. And people chant "Democracy dies." Just kidding. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, like, so I watched it 3 times. I watched it when you first mentioned you were interested a couple months ago. I watched it earlier during the week, and then I watched it this morning again. And I'll tell you what, the first time I watched it, I enjoyed the hell out of it, of course. And I watched the other 2 times, I enjoyed the hell out of it as well. But the first time there was so much going on that I was just like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like, and it's so bonkers, and I say so bonkers in the best possible way that I was like, oh my fucking god, you know? I felt like I was missing some beats the first time, but yeah, this movie, there's a lot to unpack, so that's why I had to make that joke to you, Justin. I dare you to try to sum this movie up in a sentence or two.
It's a hard one to sum up, so I'm like, well, let's just take the basic plot line as the summary instead of trying to touch upon all of the. It's an odd duck of a movie, so to speak.
No, I mean, it absolutely. I'll go a little bit into it, and then I'll let you guys continue along the way because I'm sure I'm probably going to forget some of it. I do want to unpack the story a little bit more. I mean, the story. I will say it's very well shot, very well shot. All the technical stuff is great. Even the performances. They're over the top, but they're good. I mean, we start off and we see like a chess game being had, and then you see Jeff Bridges and he's on the phone with his girlfriend, Yvette, or he's trying to get a hold of her and he's getting an answer machine. And then within the first couple of minutes, we realize he's on this oil tanker. He's being called up, and they brought this guy that's been injured, and apparently they have a conversation with this guy as he's dying, and we find out that this guy claims to be someone that shot his brother 16 years ago, who was the president. And then from there, the story just gets crazier and crazier. And each performance gets crazier and crazier. But yet, despite all the crazy performances, and despite the story that seems like it's all over the place, it really, really is a good film. I mean, they described it as a comedy slash thriller, and I never thought those two combos would ever work because maybe it's just been a long time since I've seen those two combos work together. Um, and I know the director, when he talked about making the film, he knew that he had to go that approach, but it absolutely works, in my opinion, the way they went about it because the comedy is there, but on the same time, you see the satire of everything that happened in the 60s, especially with the assassination of JFK. And you see everyone else that got shot pretty much Martin Luther King, JFK's brother, everybody that took a bullet to the head in the 60s, you see the satire there. And it's all done so well. And yet, you're also watching to go from like one scene to the next of all these just bonker things that are happening. Definitely a great choice from you, Jose. I'm so glad that you picked this film. Really, there's so many Jeff Bridges films that I've loved and enjoyed and I've seen, but yet there's so many that I haven't seen, and this was one of them. And definitely, absolutely had a blast with it. Um, I guess that's what I have to say primarily. There's a lot to unpack. I don't know if anybody else wants to share their thoughts in general or on the story or anything in particular. By all
I'll
means, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll start because I'm really curious to hear Red and Mike talk about this. But yeah, so the first time that I watched this movie too, I was a little overwhelmed. I was like, why, what is this story about? What is it based in? Like what is going on? Why is everybody dying that he speaks to? Right? It's kind of like a black comedy. But knowing that Condon kind of based it, well, he didn't kind of, he based it on the Kennedys, right? And then he just took the conspiracy theory, paranoid kind of like 70s feel, like, resistance against the government and the government telling us what to do and free love and all of that. And he mixed it into this bizarre kind of political thriller. Um, but what I found curious, because I've watched the film like 7, 8 times. And yes, I probably watched 7 or 8 times because it's one of the few films where Jeff Bridges does nudity, so he does show his butt in this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew it. I
Um,
knew it.
Yeah, he
Yeah, of course,
does.
of course. No quicker way to Cupcake's heart than showing your butt. But anyway,
That was your
but-
wedding
but-
vow.
it was, quite honestly. Um, but what I think is interesting about the film is that it sort of predicted maybe where we are now in our politics and political society, which is that yes, politicians are corrupt because they're beholden to one thing, not democracy, not what their constituents are listening to. They're beholden to the almighty dollar and how rich can they get from this. And so all of this to say that there's all through this entire weird thriller, who done it, who did what, who assassinated the president, we come to find out that it's really the politicians and their business interests that drove all of this. And it's all so that they can just live high on the hog and have their Japanese migrant butlers and their, endless days in golf carts, having sex with whomever they feel like. And it's so weird that something from the 70s predicted where we would be in our current political society. It's very crazy. I mean, even Houston says something along the lines of, as he's dying, in a really brilliant shot, sort of like thing where he's sliding off the flag and like dying and falling out off the building. He says, "Oh, check out the Brazilians. They're coming up next," or whatever. And I mean, look, Trump has talked about Bolsonaro, or maybe that's his name, I don't know, in Brazil and all of that stuff. And it's just this, you know, conspiracy of working with other world powers just to get richer and richer and richer. So the movie reveals more to itself as I watch it, in addition to being super, super crazy. Two other things, and I'll let Mike and Red talk. One, Joe Spinell from Maniac
Yes. I
is in
immediately
this.
recognized him because
I did too.
at the same time of the first watch and this one, immediately I'm like, that's Joe Spinell. I recognize those eyes. And right as he started to speak was when I was looking it up. I'm like, nope, that's his voice. I don't need to look it up. That's Joe.
Exactly, but his face is all wrapped up, so you don't really see his face. Because I remember watching it the first time and then seeing in the credits Joe Spinell, and I was like, he wasn't in this fucking movie.
Yeah, but
But
those
yeah,
are
he was.
recognizable crazy eyes of Joe
Yeah,
Spinell.
it's true. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that this was financed by drug dealers, apparently,
I
and the
heard
mob.
about that.
Fitting.
Because yeah, fitting, because Leonard Goldberg and another producer, they had ties to the mob. They plunked money into it. The other producer, who's not Leonard Goldberg, ended up serving like 12 years in prison for drug distribution. But all of this to say that the film started shooting in, I want to say, November 1977, and then because of the ties and running out of money, 4 or 5 months later, the union came in and shut down the entire production. They did not finish filming until 18 months later in 1978. And at that, it only took them 2 weeks to finish it. And then it finally got released. But even with all of that, as bonkers as the film is, you don't notice that things like that, like they were shut down by the union and they filmed like 2 years later, and then it finally got distributed like 2.5 years after they were producing. So I don't know. The whole movie, not only the history, but the movie itself is just rich in history and themes and tones. So anyway, off to you guys. I don't care who starts. I'm sure you guys have a lot
Yeah.
to say about it.
All right. Well, I'll go. First and foremost, I will say, much like you, Jose, when I first watched this a few years ago, I enjoyed it, but it was definitely overwhelming. I believe John also said the same thing, just because I was expecting something more straightforward. I was not expecting this bonkers. I wasn't expecting Jeff Bridges to stumble upon a literal war games with tanks and then he gets chased around.
In
I
a
wasn't
Pinto.
expecting that in this kind of a movie. And I enjoyed it because of that, but I remember at the time thinking, I like this movie, I'm recommending it to people, but it is a bit of a messy movie. On this rewatch, I took notice more to the satire, the political satire, even if it's a bit too on the nose, even opening up with a chess game. And not just the fact that it's still prescient today. And I don't even think they predicted. I think they just called out what was happening and were just saying this is going to continue and it's just going to balloon even further. And here we are. But it's also about not just how money corrupts the politicians and whatnot, but how it can even corrupt those who don't want to be corrupted by it. Jeff Bridges, despite being in this wealthy family, we see him working on an oil rigger. He doesn't really talk to his family much. You know, his dad resents him, kind of thinks, oh, you know, even to put this in the 70s, says, I was convinced you were a fag at one point, to which Bridges is like, yeah, gee, thanks, dad. So, but what's interesting when this time is how even Bridges is still spoiled by his money. When he has that love interest, once he's kind of told no, like when he wants to fall madly in love with her and marry her, and she doesn't see him as that. He's quick to be like, "Well, you don't have to work another day. We have money. I could do this and that." You see a character who, for us, is a good person in comparison to everyone else, and is our avatar. But then you slowly realizing he's still infected by money. Would we be as infected by this money? And he is in this circus of a relationship or politics because that's the satire is the higher ups, the rich, the elite, the 1% see the world as a circus. Everything is a joke to them. When you meet his dad, he's on the golf course and goes, "What do you think these two beautiful ladies are doing to me right now?" And you can tell Bridges is just kind of like I don't know, Dad. He goes, "Playing with my nuts, maybe," or just like, or like he doesn't even understand like your mother sleeps with a goddamn dog, crazy woman. Like that's the most common thing anyone usually does, but to them it's out there, it's outlandish. So for me on this rewatch, I was more rewarded by the fact that yeah, some of it might still just be weird for the sake of being weird, but I see the satire more. And while it's a little bit on the
Oh yeah,
nose,
definitely.
I'm getting more of what they're actually going for as opposed to just going, dude, this is a weird crime thriller, if you will, political thriller that kind of just exists outside of a bubble. And yes, Jeff Bridges' ass mwah, is
Yeah.
gorgeous in this thing, and I do love it. Um, and I do need to. I had thought, and this was not, I knew a while ago, and I still sort of picked it up. I had thought I picked up the blue, but I guess I didn't. I want to say Hamilton had it, but it was easy to find. I knew it was still on like Canopy and that. But you guys going
Yeah.
over some of the special features, I definitely need to get that set because I want to hear more about what their intentions were. Because this is a bonkers movie, but it's wonderfully bonkers, but it has a little bit more intelligence than one would expect when you see. I mean, even early on with like when they get the one inspector and they're going to try to find in Philadelphia any possible leads for like weapons. The guy that comes in is like a bumbling out a naked gun, just walking into the wrong building, destroying the place. But again, it works because it's highlighting how to them in this elite kind of group, the real world is nothing. Like it's a joke to them. You have Jim Henson's doppelganger doing some art deco stuff, being very confused why people are breaking into his, world and they can't grasp it. To anyone else, it's like, where were you in 1960s? Like, I don't know, fourth grade.
I was in
I
grade
think
school.
I was in Rhode Island.
And what about
Yeah.
the female representation? Like all the females are portrayed as like nuts. Like mom, she sounds like she has dementia. You have the
Yeah.
girlfriend she's a kind. You think she's normal until you find out later on what's going on with her deal. You have the crazy maid. He's on the phone, and the crazy maid sneaks up on him with the fucking with the curtain and tries to choke him or no, tries to throw him out the
And then
window.
nearly
And then
both takes them both over the guardrail and like what would have
yeah,
to
yeah,
be
yeah,
18th floor or whatever, very high up of this hotel. You've got the
yeah.
butler who is just the stereotypical butler. He's like, Ovaltine, sir? What?
Three shots of what?
Uh,
Actually, my two favorite comedic moments are like when he's on a plane and they're like, "You've got a phone call," and Jeff Bridges is so great with his face. He comes in, and he's like, "I have a phone call up here?" Question mark. And then like when the maid tries to kill him, he's like running after her, and then he just like stops. He's out of breath. He picks up the phone. Security, please stop the maid. She just tried to murder me.
I
Listen, he's
also
got
loved
money.
on
He's
that.
not gonna exert himself.
Yeah. I
Right.
also love on the phone call on the plane when he's trying to rush his dad, like, hey, they need to land. He's like, I own the plane. Like
And they've
it's
been
that
doing
again,
bad
that
lately
just
too.
yeah. Oh boy.
oh, it was
So yeah,
funny.
no, it definitely to your point, Justin. Absolutely, and like we all said so far, the first viewing definitely you get the bonkers, but the more you watch, you definitely pick up some of the other stuff, and I think some of the other stuff and the message it's trying to send, I think, is really strong and it's really good, and that's why I think it works so well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about
Well,
you,
I
Mike?
Mike, what do you have to? I'm
yeah,
curious to
thanks
hear what you
guys.
have to say.
I appreciate it. I'd never even really heard of this movie before until John said we're covering this flick, and I had never even heard of it, honestly. So, and I just wanted to jump on and be with you guys, and I kind of had a slower week, so I was like, I'm just gonna watch this movie. So it's on. Luckily, it's on Tubi, so I watched it in two pieces: first part, second part, the first time, and I was like, okay, I like this. I get it. It feels very like Doctor Strangelove. It felt like the Coen brothers must have seen this in the past to come up with the weird kind of dry humor that they've done. Very interesting vibe that I hadn't seen in anything, um, except for like Doctor Strangelove. So it took me a bit to kind of wrap my head around it. This morning I was like, I'm gonna watch it one more time. Um, I watched it again and it really just it all hit for me. Yeah, I thought it was so funny. I mean, there's so many great lines, and every time that one of those celebrity comes on, you're just like, wow. Wow. And then each scene crescendos into a punchline that is hilarious, whether it's two planes almost hitting each other, whether it's the fight with the maid and she ends up with her shirt ripped off, runs out naked, and he's just like, there's a maid who tried to kill me, she's naked running around, grab her. It was just, it's so off the wall crazy, and then the loud obscene sex scene where she was, oh, oh.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad because I was watching that again this morning. I was like, man, I have to remember to say that. That scene was ridiculous. Yeah.
You gotta be quiet. They're gonna call the police.
In the documentary thing that I watched, well, after I watched it, I had to like find out more, and it was like we were recording in an hour and a half, and I luckily found this. I guess it's on the Anchor Bay set, but it's this little 35-minute documentary called "Who Killed Winter Kills," and it goes into everything that you talked about. But she talked about. She's like, in the script, it said the loudest orgasm possible, and she was like, so I just went for it. And it was awesome. And there's so many awesome little things like they talked about in the documentary about how Huston, he just absolutely wasn't a fan of the Kennedys himself, so he was really excited. And every time Jeff Bridges talked about anything, he was like, yeah, we're really going to give it to the Kennedys this time. We're really going to give it to them. He had some kind of negative thing against the Kennedy family, so he was one of those first names. And I guess the director said that he'd done some documentary work which had him with some kind of a PR or manager person that helped him get these numbers, and he was just a salesperson. He was just calling people, and next thing you knew, he kept getting all this cast. It was crazy the cast that he did and how he did it. And like you said, the cinematographer, his bits, at first I'm like, wow, he's really smart. But every time he got on there, he said some really off the wall, rude comments about whether, and he's like, yeah, we weren't getting paid, but whatever. We don't get paid in movies. That's just the way it is. And how they weren't getting paid and how they shut it down. And it came back 3 times when finally they made that other movie that you talked about together, basically to get the funding to finish Winter Kills. So it was just this crazy 35-minute documentary if you get a chance to see it. And it really just opened the whole concept of this being a really biting satire. And he really said, I knew I had to do this as comedy. It was the only way to make it work. And that is why this movie works, because it's this zany Dr. Strangelove style, a political satire that is funny. And it's also really creepily like on the nose on what's going on still with conspiracies. Did you catch the part where he said he was going to go and get blood transfused from poor orphans in some country?
Yes.
And he's like, I own the hospital. That's the best way to deal with people going to the hospital.
He has a doctor that has to guard him, not as his actual security guard. They gave a doctor a gun just to guard him and has to ask him who his son is. I love that. And just also, I love the hubris that they're like, we're going to give it to the Kennedys, as if a literal assassination in the 60s didn't do the Kennedys in emotionally. They're like, it was this Winter Kills movie that really set us over the edge.
Well, it's funny in the documentary, Bridges talks about when he worked with him on Fat City and he was the director, he didn't talk to him at all. He felt really cold and he was like, oh. But then when he got into the film itself, making this movie together, they became really close. And that's when he started mentioning some of these little funny bits that he was saying. And there was a little bit when he said, yeah, I couldn't believe that the director said, I can't believe that we actually got Elizabeth Taylor. And she was like, they met and she was like, oh, it's just so kooky. Or something similar. And he just did this little impersonation of her. And he's just like, yep, I wanted her. I just wanted to sign everybody so I could tell people that this is a piece of importance. Like, and that's what was his hope. But in the end, nobody ended up seeing this. And until this, I never even knew this existed. And I think that, again, your podcast, this show does it, John. It's about shining a light on something that I hadn't seen, and I feel like I'm a pretty big movie buff myself, and the fact that I had never heard of this, and I just found it so funny and refreshing and weird and oddball, and just a precursor to so much stuff we have today. Again, Coen Brothers wit and charm, and they had to have like seen this in depth. It just felt so on the nose for what we've seen the Coen Brothers do. But this movie really was transcendent for me. I really enjoyed the hell out of it, and I want to see the other movie he did with Jeff, and I had a blast.
I never know that one. I only stumbled upon this years ago. Maybe somebody in the group might have mentioned it, but I think it was just I was trying to find like what Jeff Bridges movies would be streaming. I was in a Bridges mood, and I want to say at that point it was probably on like Prime or Netflix or something. So I was just like, okay, Winter Kills. Let's say, and the plot was similar. The synopsis is similar to what I gave, so it sounded more like a just a general political thriller. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And I was not prepared for it, and that's why I was like, man, if I synopsize it, I got to take myself back a couple of years to how I got. I wouldn't say tricked. I got, I was told what it was, but a good bamboozling of a movie. It's so much so that we didn't really even talk much about Perkins in this. And I think twofold because most of his stuff is in the back half and we don't want to spoil
Yeah.
it. But even he gets a moment because like early on he gets called and when he hears about like an assassination tape, he just goes, that's astonishing. Like it's just the way and we've realized
Right.
now, like as the movie goes on, why he reacts that way. But I'm just like, what a weird way to react to being told that somebody was over people were, killed. It's just well, that's astonishing.
Right.
Well, that scene when
Um,
he gets hit by that billy club, he
Yeah.
really got hit hard by a billy club and it dislocated his
Oh.
shoulder. So when you see him like this and he's like all weird
He's
looking, he
shaking,
actually
yeah.
and shaking because he actually dislocated his shoulder.
Oh.
Jeff Bridges didn't realize that was really like he thought it was just a prop, and so when he hit him, it went.
Oh my! And that whole scene,
Yes.
especially with Bridges too, like his character, Nick, like the way he's doing it, he didn't want a weapon to begin with, so he's like haphazardly, like even like Bridges' character's like, "You're not really gonna hit me." And it's like this scream is real, but it sounds more like a shock. Like I can't believe you actually did that.
And he's all, ah!
Ah.
We should I should also mention that in that documentary, Richard cops to essentially stalking Jeff Bridges. Like
Yeah.
he had a friend send him the script and then he rented an apartment like a block away so that he could contrive to just sort of like either run into him or just be near him so that if he accepted, like I'm like, wow. And John Bailey, noted DP, he shot like Cat People, some other films, but he had to step in to be the DP when they resumed filming because Jigman wasn't available. Yeah.
Oh. Funny
And
story.
also-
That's actually how Jose recruited me originally for Watch Get Plus. He just
He moved
it turns
very
out he
close
just
and then
rented
waited for you
an
to get out.
He was yeah, Red was the runner up. The other didn't accept.
He didn't quite survive.
The first was
He didn't
Jeff
survive
Bridges.
the
He was
interview
like, man,
process.
let me get Bridges to do a podcast with me. Wouldn't that be wild?
And I also didn't realize apparently Belinda Bauer was dating our director, Yvette.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
And I think Jeff mentioned it on that documentary you're talking about too. He said it was a little bit awkward at first because here I was while she's screaming, and I got the director over there, and of course he was really cool about everything, but
Yeah. Very weird. It's so interesting that like I think there are very few, well, maybe we don't know all the history of every single movie that comes out, but like it's weird. The movie's good, and then the odd history about the making of the film makes it even better in some ways, because then you're like, all that shit that they were dealing with, and they popped off a really good black comedy, you know? It's good.
it's
Well, on
almost
that-
as if I wonder if like the Trouble production kind of enhanced, like maybe inspired some of the mania that is the movie. I mean, I'd also
Yeah.
be curious to read the novel to see how closely. I mean, obviously it's the same, writer adapting it, but how closely it is. Did he take differences when he decided to adapt it to film?
There's two different versions of this on disc. There's the Kino Blue, which is the one I have, and Indicator has a release. So to your point, Jose, about the crazy things that happened on set and stuff like that, there's an interview where the director and Jeff Bridges revisit. I guess they meet up years later and they talk about the film, and they actually literally have a conversation about how they literally could make a movie about the making of the movie, like the story behind all the craziness, the mob, all the stuff that went wrong, the fact that it got shut down 3 times, like literally could be its own movie, And he said, there are actually obviously plenty of stories like that in the world of Hollywood and even independent filmmaking, where the behind the scenes story is just so bonkers that in itself could make a great movie. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
has anyone seen? I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet. I had it on when I had Paramount Plus. It's off topic, but you know me, I go off topic. They had that one miniseries where they talked about the making of The Godfather.
The Offer. I haven't seen that.
Offer.
I haven't seen it yet either, but I've heard good things, and it has Miles
saw-
Teller's in that, right?
Yeah,
who I
yeah, and
quite
that's
like.
also another one where it's like, apparently there's this whole story, this whole crazy story about what went into and what went wrong, and the trials and tribulations of trying to cast people. Because back then, getting Al Pacino was a lot more difficult, more challenging. Not getting him, but convincing the studio to have him star in the role and stuff like that. So I guess there's probably the long-winded point that I'm trying to make is there's probably a lot of stories out there about films and the craziness of getting them made and the production and trying to convince the studios to let them to make it and the stuff that goes wrong, and and some of these stories are just absolutely fascinating, just hearing about that stuff as well as obviously the story itself of the film, so
And how hard do you think it was to convince Pacino to do Jack and Jill? I want to see that story.
Jeez.
I don't know what the fuck. He's like, hey, you want to make $20 million?
Yeah, it has to be
Sure,
something
why
like
not? Here's
that.
20
Like,
million or whatever he got paid, but anyway, so yeah, I guess if unless anybody else has any thoughts, I think that wraps up everybody's general feel on the film. Thank you guys all for coming on. Jose and Justin, you guys have been awesome. It's been a pleasure having you for the Spotlight series. Thank you. Mike,
Hey, we
when you
got
were
more to
giving
come.
credit, you
Yeah.
got to give credit. 100% credit goes to Jose for picking this movie this month, and it's awesome. So thank you, Jose, for picking this wonderful movie. I'm so glad I saw it, and even more glad that I own it now. And Mike, dude, it's so awesome to see you. It's so great to have you on again. I'm so glad that everything's going well with the job, and you're able to find time, and you were able to get you on. So
Yeah.
this was fantastic. So, and especially because it is the 50th episode of the show. So it was such a great time to have you on. So thank you, Mike, for coming on today. This was a really great time.
Thank you so much, John. I'm glad to be back and to be with the greats, Red and
Yes,
Cupcake,
absolutely.
Woo!
my favorites. I remember when I first met Justin and I was able to get him for the Kringle that we used to do through the Gentleman's Guide. And I remember I
Yes.
worked so hard to make sure I got as much wrestling and garbage
Yeah,
I
you
could
did
to send his
wonderful.
way.
You did. And I love that it's me that you were wrestling and then you're like, in garbage, because let's be honest here. Which is true, because as I'm putting together my Christmas stream, there's some garbage that I'm going to inflict upon all of you that make it. So,
Oh no, watch
And
out.
John did the same thing. I met John through the Kringle too. John actually
Yeah,
sent me some porno, some awesome porn from the '70s that I had the
yeah, of
chance
course
to
we
watch.
gotta.
and Jose and I are actually going to send you some Simon Rex pornos now for this
There
year.
you go.
Oh, man.
That's right.
Nasty.
Happy
We're gonna
Kringle.
make you a fan one way or another. So speaking of stuff we should recommend, well, first of all, let me start by you. I'll start with you, Justin, because you have your big Christmas special. Do
Mhm.
you want to tell people a little bit more about?
Yeah. So if you are on Facebook, I'm back on there to promote this. I missed this last year due to being busy, so it's back. Every Christmas, I like to do, just like I do with Halloween, a 12-hour stream of just really weird Christmas specials, episodes, shorts, and then I'll cap it off with a movie. And I found a doozy of a movie that I haven't watched in full, but the clips I've seen, I am very much looking forward to it. So on
Oh.
Saturday, December, I believe it's 6th, so 7th, I'm sorry, it's 7th this year. Saturday, December 7th from 12 p.m. Eastern to 12 to midnight Eastern. It's just going to be 12 hours of craziness. Everything is a mystery up until I reveal it. It'll be fun cartoons. I'm always putting final touches even up to like, I feel like I have the final schedule put together, but then there's always something else. Like I had a different movie in line and then I was like, wait a minute, I just found something else that I got to do. It's going to be a lot of fun. Most of it, I can guarantee you, most stuff is from like 70s, 80s, and 90s. Maybe a few recent things sprinkled in. I know a couple of years ago, the movie I ended up showing was a more recent one, Infinite Santa 8000, which is just bonkers. Uh, we've always done some weird things. I've done like the Mr. Bill holiday special, the Max Headroom. There was a Max Headroom Christmas special in the 80s because it was the 80s. I did. I'll never forget. I don't think I'm ever going to top, and I still don't remember how I stumbled upon this, but we talked about it on Watch Skip Plus. Can I be your bratwurst, please? Which
Oh
is the
my God.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yes.
softcore porn set at Christmas that I still don't know how I found it, folks, but I did. And rest assured, I don't think I found something like that, but I am trying to make it where I find something public access as well each year. I found some like weird Italian guy Halloween special for back in October. I found something for Christmas this year. So If you can make it, it's all through Cosme. There'll be a link on the Facebook page, GGT Xmas 2024. Just come, have a good time. Come for, even if it's just one special for 30 minutes, whenever, it's a blast.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to be putting it on my calendar. I'm going to definitely try to make it because I missed the Halloween one and I kicked myself because I just had too much going on. But I'm definitely going to try to catch part of it. I'll definitely be there.
I look forward to it.
The
Very cool.
Bratwurst movie was everything. As
Yeah.
I'm going to say, it stars Jeff Stryker, and if you know that name, you know what you're in for. So
Yep.
That
Uh-oh.
podcast is infamous. I listened to that and laughed so hard when you guys talked about that. Oh my gosh.
So we got Justin's special. Of course, we would be remiss without mentioning Jose himself and Watch Skip Plus. Definitely
Yeah.
check out Watch Skip Plus. Every week they cover the newest stuff coming into theaters. And this week you guys said you were talking about Gladiator 2.
And then we've actually, so this is my third recording today. So we had
Oh,
recorded,
wow.
we recorded back to back Gladiator 2 and then Wicked, so that we have the Thanksgiving weekend for family and stuff. Yeah. So those are the next two
Nice.
episodes. Yeah.
Very
Nice,
cool.
nice.
So I'm definitely looking forward to hear your thoughts on both of those films. So definitely check out Watch Skip Plus with Jose and Alex every week. Great podcast. Of course, I got to give a shout out to Troy and Brad over at the Not a Bomb podcast. Every week they take a look at films that were a bomb, either critically or commercial failure, and they revisit them and determine whether they're actually a bomb or not. And I look forward to their stuff every week. I think you guys are going to be the rumors, whisperings. You're going to be doing a Not a Bombs classic sometime this month.
Sometime.
Polish one off.
Sometime we hope for
Singing
Singing in the Rain. Yeah, but I thought you were going to mention the fact that I will be on their
Oh yes, Madam Web.
Madam Web
Great part.
episode, which we record on Monday. So
Yes, so you gotta hear Jose in his full love song to Madam Web.
yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna get grilled. I'm gonna be in the hot seat. Why? But I mean, I defended labor pains with Lindsay Lohan, so I think I can do it.
You may be the only person who has willingly reviewed Madam Web on a podcast now twice.
Several times.
And
I
I
know,
don't
exactly.
even hate Madam Web as much as other
No,
people
I
do.
don't.
I've talked off air with you of at least it's a little bit more energetic than Morbius, because my problem with
Yep.
Morbius was just boring. But
Yeah.
I still don't think it's good. Like I that was my Mike, you sometimes talk about like you'll go see a movie before it leaves. I saw that the Thursday before it left because I'm like, I should see it in a theater just because it was me and just two other people just going, huh, okay. And when I say it was leaving, I think it was like its second weekend showing too. So it's not like 2 months later. It was like 2 weeks later. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they are gonna dump this now.
Yeah.
So of course, you have to wear that Madam Web sweater on the night of the Madam Web.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And I was joking. You got to get Troy and Brad to convert the video as well, so you can show your full Madam Web support with the sweatshirt.
Right. That's
Got to
right.
get them converted. So we got Not a Bomb. Of course, I have to mention The Godfathers, The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Will and Sam. Each week, these guys pick a film, and a lot of the times, because there's a big gaping hole in my knowledge of films, they pick films that I haven't heard of. Some of them I have, and they really just, again, shine the light on films that definitely deserve some exposure. So big shout out to Will and Sam at The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema. I'll talk about Raiders of the podcast. Raiders, these guys, again, I don't know how they managed to do this two films, but each week they talk about two films. Once a month they talk about 4 films. I think in the newest episode, I believe that just dropped today, I'm pretty sure it's 4 films. And God bless their hearts. I don't know how they managed to do it. These guys are awesome. They were kind enough to have me on the end of October, and I had a really fun time. So check out Raiders of the Podcast. And then finally, I will mention Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Robin Joe. Robin Joe will do an A film and a B film. Another really fantastic show. It almost feels like going to the drive-in, And they pick up, again, a wide variety of different films. When I was on there in August, I did the Troma-produced Astron 6 film Father's Day, and then we talked about the 1980s film Mother's Day. So it was a great combo, and they usually have stuff like that. So Rob and Joe are fantastic, so definitely check out Caliber 9 from Outer Space. So that wraps up stuff you guys should be listening to. Before I head out, I want to thank everyone again for being here today. You guys are awesome, and I love having you on. I want to thank all my listeners. The support has meant the world to me. And also, next Sunday, I am going to be talking about a Christmas film, one that I feel like does not get talked about enough. I'm going to be talking about Trapped in Paradise, a Nicolas Cage film with John
Yes.
Lovitz and Dana Carvey. Now, Mike the Wildebeest is going to be kind enough to join me as well as Justin.
Yep.
I don't know if you have anything going on Sunday. I know it's a holiday weekend, but if you are free, of course, Jose, you are more than welcome to join us as well. We're going
Awesome.
to be recording at the same time. So that's going to be next week's episode. I got a whole lineup for the month of December. I'm trying to stay more consistent, guys. There have been a couple weeks since I put out my last episode, but life has just been busy. So that wraps up today's episode, and I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having
My
me.
pleasure. Always fun.